Here's my problem with modern sci-fi. It always cuts to black right when I start caring. Project Hail Mary? Great. Humanity survives. Science wins. And then we're done. No, I want to stay in that universe. Drop me in a random star system. Low fuel, no plan. Let me figure it out. That's why Foundation Galactic Frontiers is interesting. Yes, that Foundation. Isaac Asimov. The guy who basically wrote the playbook Hollywood keeps borrowing. You're not the hero. No chosen one nonsense. You're a traitor. You explore, make deals, pick fights you probably shouldn't, and live with it. Meanwhile, you're running your ship, building it piece by piece, managing crew, resources, basically trying not to suffocate in deep space. Always a plus. And when things go south, they really go south. Ship combat, ground combat, because space wasn't dangerous enough already. What I like is the scale. You feel small. The universe feels huge, and no one's coming to save you. That's sci-fi. Check the link in the description or scan the QR code to download it. Mobile, PC, your choice. You'll get a free hero and battleship to start and use my code for extra resources. Because trust me, you're going to need the help. Movies end. This is where the story keeps going. The future of Avatar. What is the future of Avatar? Alan, you have the story.
Yes. James Cameron says the future of Avatar franchise is not locked in. Even after Avatar Fire and Ash made $1.4 billion, despite earlier plans for 5 films, he admits a decision on continuing hasn't been finalized. Several factors have contributed to Fire and Ash falling short of expectations. Critics noted weaker reviews, repetitive marketing compared to The Way of Water, a shorter promotional window, and a lengthy runtime that made theatrical viewings more demanding. Additionally, the film lacked the extensive merchandising and cultural saturation typically associated with major Disney releases, limited to overall impact. At the same time, broader uncertainty at Disney is affecting multiple franchises. Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar are all being reevaluated, and even billion-dollar hits no longer guarantee sequels. This climate has led to a question about whether Avatar will continue expanding, including doubts that the planned theme park in California could potentially be replaced by a Zootopia-themed attraction. Avatar is hugely profitable, but no longer untouchable. Cameron appears determined to finish the saga, yet Disney has been far more cautious about moving forward.
Look, I think the reason I really think the second and third Avatar movie really didn't do much to move the story forward. There's a really interesting story about the future of humanity. Can humans survive beyond Earth? If Earth is dying, do they relocate to another planet, to Pandora, and somehow gain the ability to breathe and survive in the environment? Can the native Na'vi people have some kind of truce with the Earthlings who are being resettled in a new land? Maybe they take Jake Sully back to Earth as like a prize that's won. There's so much they could have done if James Cameron thought of the epic scope of the movie and humanity, but he really made Swiss Family Avatar, Swiss Family Robinson in space, and made it a family drama mainly to appeal to kids. So I really didn't like that last movie. I enjoyed Avatar 2, Way of Water, but really the story is not there. He didn't really take it to a risky place. I was expecting more. I really don't care. And if he's going to make 4 and 5, you have to have you got to take some big swings to keep it interesting. And then Jake Sully is like this connection because he embodies a former Earthling. And he is a Na'vi. There's so much interesting story material there, and he blew it. I think he blew it by really not leaning in, by basically making part 3 a rehash of part 2. So I don't care. If he does 4 and 5, you got to take some big swings and really, you know, have some big sci-fi concepts. What are your thoughts, Alan?
Yeah, I'm going to say what's not being said. You know, you and I both saw the third one. The third one wrapped things up. The third one, you can end on the third one, and that's the trilogy of Avatar.
Not really. There were other hanging conflicts.
Right? but there weren't questions that you needed answered, or storylines that needed to be. You know, there was no cliffhanger for one thing. There's nothing in Avatar 3 that says, "Oh, I need to know what happens next." They lived happily ever after for the most part. You know, they figured out a way for humans to survive on Avatar land, on the planet. And then, you know, you basically dispatch with the bad guys, the main bad guys. And so, look, I think look, if I were to guess, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy for James Cameron, just by saying, look, I ended as neatly as I could. So whether I make more or not, it doesn't matter. You know, it could end here, but to your point, if that's true, well, what do I need to know? You know, I'm not, you mentioned some interesting story ideas, but do I really need to explore that? Is that compelling enough to make another $1.5 billion? So I think it's a great time to just kind of end it here and move on. Honestly, it felt like that Avatar 3 was to justify all the money spent on Avatar 2. So they could just reuse all that stuff,
Right.
try to make some money back for that massive investment they made in special effects.
Well,
in the second movie.
you know, you amortize the costs over 2 movies,
right?
What justifies it? The only way there'll be a future for Avatar is money.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I mean, the movies are kind of non-controversial. They're family oriented, and I can see them making 4 and 5, and we're gonna see them in 2029 and 2035.
You know, it's this is the test of Josh tomorrow, of whether he does things for the money or does things for the art.